and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the warning track. Brett Quintyne here with you. You know what, folks? I'm back from Arizona. I'm very happy to be back. Yes, 99 degrees in Arizona today, but here in our New York studios, we're comfortable, and we hope that you guys are comfortable. Join us. 347-480-1724 is the number to call, and you can participate on the warning track. Well, you know what? All of the month of March, I have been preaching spring training this, spring training that. But now that it's the first day of April, every game counts. It's all business. We saw some great games yesterday, even more today. The regular season is upon us, and I am very happy, and I hope you guys are also. 347-480-1724 is the number to join us. Well, first off, let's kind of talk about yesterday's game. And when I say the game, there was one in particular that really wowed me, and it was not from Yankee Stadium. It was from Cincinnati. The Brewers and the Reds. The Reds traditionally open at home on opening day. Ricky Weeks led off with a home run, led off the season with a round tripper. Not one home run, but batter number 2 homered as well. That's simply unprecedented. But for Milwaukee, it wasn't how you start the game, it's how you finish the game. Ramon Hernandez comes up with a big 3-run homer yesterday, and it was the Reds winning on opening day. To me, that was a classic contest. But how about the game a little bit closer to home, up the road a piece? Yes, I know we're in the city, but I'm going to say up the road a piece. The Yankees, they played well yesterday. They had some great relief pitching, and they did what they needed to do. They got a home run from Curtis Granderson late. They got the round tripper from Mark Teixeira early, and they're 1-0. But really, opening day, opening weekend, what does that all mean? It means nothing technically. It is game 1 of a 162-game season. You can't give anybody a pennant this early, and I just think it is fantastic baseball going on. The Phillies, they had a come-from-behind victory. Everyone said, hey, you know what? Let's just pencil this W in, this W in. Let me tell you, folks, the Phillies have an outstanding squad, a terrific pitching rotation. Very simply, right, left, right, left. And what I mean by that, Roy Halladay, followed by Cliff Lee, followed by Roy Oswalt, followed by Cole Hamels. That's tough to beat. Roy Halladay threw well today. 6 innings, 6 solid innings, gave up just the 1 run. The bullpen fell apart, but John Mayberry Jr. came to the rescue, and the Phillies were indeed victorious. 347-480-1724 is the number to call. Join us on the warning track. A couple of notes we'd like to pass on to you. Matt Holliday, one day he goes 3 for 4 against the Padres. Holliday, of course, with the St. Louis Cardinals. The next day he winds up in the hospital. Matt Holliday indeed undergoing an emergency appendectomy. That is not good, but fortunately, it's very early in the season. All signs say that Matt Holliday should and more than likely will have a complete recovery. Of course, he's out for the rest of the San Diego Padres series this weekend. More than likely, he'll miss the month of April. This is a guy who's in the prime of his career, and yes, 1 month won't hurt him. And if you're a St. Louis fan, rather early than late, because Holliday is very key to your club. A guy who really is past his prime, a guy who has simply retired. Remember Randy Winn? Randy Winn played for 13 seasons in the major leagues. Randy Winn is not going to the Hall of Fame, but he did play for 5 teams. He played for the Mariners, the Rays, Yankees, Cardinals, and Giants. This past spring, he latched on with the Baltimore Orioles. He wasn't going to make the club, so he decided to hang them up. And you know what, Randy Winn? He finished with a .284 career batting average. That is stupendous over the course of 13 seasons. He put the ball in play. He was a solid all-around player. He actually had the distinction of playing in 1,717 games, but never reached the postseason. He was the active leader in that category. Folks, don't ask me who the current active leader is now that Randy Wynn is retired. I simply don't know, but I will say that is tough for a guy to play that long without ever sniffing the postseason. 347-480-1724 is the number to join me on the warning track. This is opening weekend, and the Chicago Cubs opened at home. They had a fantastic fan base. They always have a fantastic fan base, but something that I thought was great was they had Robert Redford throw out the first pitch. Robert Redford starred in The Natural. Remember that movie? Back in 1984, Robert Redford and The Natural was a nationwide hit. And how about this? Wrigley Field didn't even have lights until 1988. That shows really how long 1984 was. Of course, 84 was a division-winning season for the Chicago Cubs. Redford threw out the first pitch, but something I found even more intriguing about really even before that scenario, the Chicago Cubs manager, Mike Quade, took the train to the ball game. He didn't drive his car. He didn't have someone drive him. Very simply, and from what I understand, he lives in the downtown Loop area of Chicago. He simply got on the red line and got off at Addison. What big league manager takes public transportation to the ball game? In his mind, in his thought process, he's simply going to work like any other person. I think that's great. I really think that that is terrifically interactive, and Mike Quade actually can do this because he's not a household name or a popular face. Honestly, if Mike Quade walked in right now, well, yeah, I guess I would probably know him, and I'm sure a few people in this area would. But for the most part, he's not a recognizable guy. He simply got on the train and went to work and managed the ball game. Unfortunately for the Cubs, it was a losing effort. The Pirates won that ball game 6-3. Kevin Correa started for Pittsburgh. I had the distinction of seeing Kevin Correa in his early days. He actually was a top-notch farmhand in the San Francisco Giants organization. I called many of his games back in 2003, and you could see that he was on track to become a big leaguer. I didn't think he would move up as quick as he did, but here he is 8 seasons later, finding himself as the opening day starter for a major league team, and in this case it was the Pittsburgh Pirates. Speaking of the Pirates, the Royals, some of these ball clubs, I really want to see them successful. It's not good for baseball when the Pirates have not had a winning season since Barry Bonds left. 18, 19 years of sub-500 baseball. It's not good for baseball when the Kansas City Royals consistently struggle. I believe they had the one break-even year about 5 or 6 years ago. I think Tony Pena was managing the club at that point. I don't like to see, and I'm going to call them bottom feeders for this conversation. 347-480-1724 is the number to call as far as conversations are concerned. But I want to see guys like Andrew McCutchen do well for the Pirates. It'd be great to see Kevin Correa be a 20-game winner for Pittsburgh. It's about promoting the game, and it's about really having teams be competitive. I don't like to see teams at the end of the season 60-102. Realistically, somebody is going to be in the cellar. That's just the way the game is shaped. That's the way the divisions are. But you don't like to see the same teams over and over struggle. I was fortunate to see the Kansas City Royals play in spring training. They had a great game against the Seattle Mariners. They've got some young stars in that ball club. So you want to see some of these players and some of these teams just really have good seasons. I'd even say the Washington Nationals. They're a team that has struggled, albeit they are a new franchise, the former Montreal Expos. They have the new stadium. They've got some life. They've been drafting some players. Obviously, a guy like Steven Strasburg, hopefully he can make a brief appearance at the end of the 2011 season. More than likely it will be 2012, and then really Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper is a big-time prospect, and more so, he can do a lot of things. He can catch, he can play the outfield, and Bryce Harper is young. He's 18 and he can hit. From what I understand, Bryce Harper, who is a quote-unquote natural catcher, more than likely he will be an outfielder in the big leagues because that's where he will have the fastest track to move up various levels. Bryce Harper, if I'm correct, is starting the season in A-ball in the Nationals chain, but again, some of these rising stars create some opportunity and really just some energy. Think about it. The Nationals traditionally do not draw terribly well, but when Steven Strasburg was on the hill for his starts last year, they packed the park. And that's what I really like to see. I like to see teams play in front of full stadiums. Obviously, you're not going to sell out every night, but at the same time, when various cities have a lot of optimism, I think it's terrific. I really think it's great. There's a number on the bottom of your screen, folks, 347-480-1724. That's the number to call on the warning track. 11 games in the major leagues this afternoon into the evening. Red Sox and Rangers, they're doing battle in the Lone Star State. We've already seen a couple of finals. The Phillies coming from behind to defeat the Houston Astros. We've seen the Pirates topple the Cubs. We've got a lot of games. Marlins and Mets. How about the New York Mets? Matt Mankiewicz and I spoke of the New York Mets last week, and I will say I just don't see good things for the Mets this season. Jason Bay on the DL. They just seem like a blah franchise. They don't seem like they have a lot of energy to them. Their ace pitcher, Johan Santana, he's out till who knows when. Hopefully it's only a couple of months, but at the same time, there's the talk of Jose Reyes. Was this his last opening day in a Mets uniform? He certainly is trade bait. He certainly is a guy who they can really count on, or I should say count on as far as some numbers are concerned, but they could get a lot for him. He's still fairly young, and he could be the centerpiece of a big trade to possibly bring some of those young prospects to New York. And when I say New York, we're not talking about the Yankees right now. We're talking about the Mets. I think that the Mets really have their work cut out for them this season. They still have a fairly high payroll, but at the same time, between this whole ownership, I don't want to call it a scandal, between the ownership problems, they've got their work cut out for them. They will host the Big League All-Star Game in the year 2013. So obviously that's something to look forward to at Citi Field. But at the same time, you'd like to see winning baseball out there in Flushing. 347-480-1724 is the number to call. Join me on the warning track. Again, plenty of games to talk about. Last night, it was a terrific game between the Giants and the Dodgers. And in the end, it was Don Mattingly. Donnie Baseball winning his big league managerial debut. I'm good for him. I'm happy for him. Donnie Baseball has waited a long time for that shot, and he obviously made the right move. He followed Joe Torre out to Los Angeles. He waited 3 seasons, and in the end, obviously it was not Torre's decision to name Mattingly the skipper. He certainly had a lot of pull, but the Dodger brass felt that the Los Angeles National League Baseball franchise would be in good hands under Don Mattingly, and last night the Dodgers win their opener. They're in the midst of a 4-game series against the San Francisco Giants. Well, this will bring us to our commercial break as you are watching the warning track here on Sports.com.
Live on Sports.com. I'm Peter Schwartz, and we're joined by one of the current.
If you want everything sports, you got to tune in to Schwartz on Sports. Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., Peter Schwartz, the esteemed broadcaster, takes on everything sports. He's got everything from high-end pro sports like the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball to alternative sports like extreme games, lacrosse, tennis, golf, and everything in between.
Joined by Minnesota Vikings Hall of Famer John Randall. Last year, you were inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and that is the biggest honor that a player can get bestowed on him. What was that feeling like when you were enshrined in that camp?
It was unbelievable.
You got to check out Schwartz on Sports because there's nothing you know that he doesn't. He knows everything sports. So check it out, 8 p.m. on Sports.com, Tuesdays.
Welcome to sports. My name is Greg Dorman, and this is Rally Notes.
Racing fans, don't forget that on Thursdays at 7 p.m., it's time for Rally Notes. Greg Dorman, rally racing co-driver from Klein Racing, hosts guests and takes your calls about the entire automotive industry, rally racing, and auto racing in general. Rally racing is a great sport. They have Subarus and all sorts of off-road, all-wheel drive vehicles that run through the mud and the backlogging roads. But he's not only talking rally, he'll talk all sorts of racing and automobiles as well. We'll test cars, we'll drive cars, and we'll have a lot of fun. Rally Notes, 7 p.m. on Thursday. Don't miss it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Warning Track. Brett Quintyne here in our New York City studios where it is opening weekend. Plenty of games, plenty of baseball that we have yet to talk about, a lot of games that we can talk about, a lot going on here in opening weekend. And you know what? A team I've always enjoyed talking about, the San Francisco Giants. Not because they are the defending world champions, but I mentioned Kevin Correa in the first half of the show. Very simply, I've had the opportunity to see a lot of Giant farmhands over the course of the years, but a guy who is on the line with us, Doug Greenwald, has seen numerous San Francisco Giant prospects over the years. Doug Greenwald, how are you? Welcome to the Warning Track.
All right, Brett, thanks. Excited to be on the Warning Track. I've been up to home plate before, but never on the warning track.
Well, Doug, I was mentioning Kevin Correa a little bit earlier in the show. We spoke about him. We actually got to meet and talk, you and I, last week. I don't want to say I'm surprised about Kevin Correa, but I certainly am very happy to see his progress. You saw him a lot later in his career than I did.
Yeah, and, it's again a good, affordable pick for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's been around a little bit, as you know, with the Giants, last year with his hometown Padres, and now with the Pirates. And, when you're with Pittsburgh, again, you don't necessarily have a lot of resources, but I think we can start to use the word veteran with Kevin Correa. And, it's exciting to see him get the win day in his first ever opening day start. So I think it'll be a good addition to what generally is a young ball club.
Absolutely. And speaking of young guys, as I've mentioned, you've gotten to see a lot of prospects. The Giants are starting a guy, if I'm correct, his name is Brandon Belt at first base. Tell us a little bit about him. You obviously saw him all spring long doing the Giants play-by-play.
Well, I think the thing that really strikes me about Brandon Belt, aside from his good average, aside from a guy who's about 6'5", who has speed, aside from his smooth defense, is the guy that's not even 23 years old yet, and his maturity level and very, very good attitude about learning from the others around him in spring training, but his strike zone discipline is phenomenal. And last night I read that in his big league debut against the Dodgers that he took, I think, a total of 21 pitches over his 4 at-bats.
Wow.
Including, I believe, he worked a walk and had a great at-bat against Broxton at the end of the game. I mean, it wasn't great. He made the last out, but the point is he battled Broxton pretty well. And, here's a guy that's, as I said, this is just his second year of professional baseball.
That's
but his
quite
strike zone
impressive.
discipline is really, really good. And just his first game up in the big leagues, he showed it.
Take us around the infield of the Giants, if you could, Doug. If I'm correct, Freddie Sanchez inked a contract extension at second base. Miguel Tejada new at shortstop. Obviously, he's a veteran. Talk a little bit about that Giant infield, and not so much what we can expect, but this is a solid ball club. Obviously, they have a lot returning from 2010.
Well, they do. Again, the news this morning was Freddie Sanchez did sign a contract. Guy that has battled injuries the last couple of years. The Giants got him from Pittsburgh about a year and a half ago. Had a sore shoulder when they acquired him. Had a sore shoulder going into last year, but was good to go this year, which was really his first full spring as a Giant. Brandon Belt. Now, Belt was a question mark to make the team all along, but with Cody Ross's injury, that allowed Aubrey Huff, who normally would be at first base, to move to right field and give Belt the spot at first. Then you have, when I say additions, you have either healthy additions or new guys on the infield. Freddie Sanchez appears healthy. Pablo Sandoval, it's a new Pablo, a new Panda. He lost 35 pounds in the offseason. Has really looked good defensively this spring. He's getting now to more balls. Obviously a little fast having lost all that weight.
Sure.
And then you have a veteran player in Miguel Tejada.
Absolutely.
Former MVP and a guy that is now back playing shortstop. When the Padres got him last year, it was to play third base. But
Correct.
Feels like, Tejada says that he can go 162 games, something he did for about a 5-year span.
True.
When he was with the A's and then later Baltimore. But Tejada did not have a very good spring. But I think a lot of guys feel that he's a veteran player and that his time to shine comes to regular season. So it's a little bit of a revamped infield in the sense that Pablo's a new man, Sanchez is healthy, Tejada is new, and Belt is one day into his big league career.
And how about my man Buster Posey? I think that might be one of my favorite names in baseball. He's obviously behind the plate.
Well, I mean, you're talking about the foundation of the franchise probably for the next 10 years.
Definitely.
I mean, besides Thomas Fresno, and I was surprised he was in Fresno for that long. The last couple months of the 09 season, the first 2 months of last season, just a phenomenal person, and the sky. I guess you could say the sky's the limit. He's already reached the sky, whether it be as a team accomplishment or as the rookie of the year. But to think that Buster Posey gets to play a full year in the major league, and he's got a lot of years ahead of him. It's going to be a lot of fun.
347-480-1724 is the number to call. We're speaking with Doug Greenwald. Doug Greenwald, the voice of the AAA affiliate for the San Francisco Giants, the Fresno Grizzlies. He also has a distinction of being the play-by-play guy for the San Francisco Giants, the big club during the spring. And Doug, who would be the main competition, if you could say, in that National League West for the Giants?
Well, I think a lot of people are pointing at the Colorado Rockies because they have two cornerstones that are going to be there for many years with Tulowitzki and Gonzalez. They do have a little bit of age on their team, sure, with Todd Helton. They got some question marks as well. I don't know. I know that there's a lot of potential there with Dexter Fowler. I don't know if he's going to be maybe the end-all be-all that they say in terms of having to get on base for those guys, but. Certainly like the makeup of their club. I like, obviously Ubaldo Jimenez and De La Rosa and the young pitcher and Jason Hamill, and certainly Houston Street at the back end of that bullpen.
Absolutely.
The Rockies performed well much of last year, so I think they're going to be pretty stiff competition for the Giants. I never count out the Dodgers.
Sure.
No matter what, I realize the Dodgers have a lot of problems right now with their ownership, and they got a lot of question marks. They got players coming up on free agency, not this year, but really more so at the end of next season. And, who knows if they're going to maybe have to unload some of those guys if things don't go well. But and they're battling injuries right now, too. I mean, John Garland on the DL and
Correct.
Stacey Blake on the DL. But, I still don't count out to L.A. Their rotation doesn't scare me a ton, really, other than Kershaw. But, the Dodgers generally are in the mix, and I don't see that changing a whole lot this season when you have Kemp and Loney and
very
Bevier
true.
and
They've got a
McCall.
solid lineup.
That's they got a pretty good middle of the lineup. I like the addition of Marcus Timms as well.
Moving away from individual teams, and I know your time is valuable, I'll let you go in a second, but something I like to ask everybody who we have, whether it's via Skype, whether they call in, if you could change one thing about Major League Baseball, I think I know what you're going to say because we talk about it a lot. What would you change, Doug?
Well, I guess the obvious answer is I'm going to say interleague play. I'm guessing you thought I was going to say that.
Sure, yeah, I realize you are just not a fan of it, but
I'm not a fan of it, but I've harped on it for the last decade and a half, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going anywhere. So I might change my tune a little bit.
Okay.
And I think 162 games, as much as I love baseball and we all love baseball,
absolutely,
I do think if you're going to have expanded playoffs, 162 games is a little too long.
Okay, interesting take.
I think then you can go back to 154 games, and that extra week is in substitute for that extra playoff.
That's fair. That's definitely.
Yeah,
I like to hear that.
But yes, I eliminate interleague play, implode it, blow it up, all that. But that's probably not going to happen. But I think the other thing could happen is it just, and the season I think starts a little too early.
It does.
I mean, you look at how cold the weather is, and I know it can still get snow in late April in New York. I realize that, but generally speaking, I think if you could bump the season back 1 week later, shorten it to 154 games, then I think that would work better.
That sounds good, Doug. Hey, thanks a lot for the call. I, of course, always value your opinion, and more so, I enjoy talking baseball with you. Folks, that's Doug Greenwald, voice of the Fresno Grizzlies. He has seen a lot of past, present, and future San Francisco Giants. Let's move on to one last subject as we run out of time. An article I was reading on the website as far as the international flavor of Major League Baseball. 27.7% of all big league ball players have been born outside of the United States. I don't know if I thought that was a high number, a lower number. I was just intrigued by the number or the statistic, and leading the way as far as countries are concerned, the Dominican Republic. I don't think too many of us are surprised with that. The Dominican Republic has 86 players who are currently on major league rosters throughout the major leagues. Well, I guess that would make sense, on major league rosters throughout the major leagues. But yes, the Dominican Republic leads the way there. They have 86. As far as teams are concerned, the New York Yankees, 16 of their players were born outside of the United States. And as far as the number of countries, you go across the country, and it's a team that Doug and I were just speaking about, the Los Angeles Dodgers. They have representatives of 8 different countries. I guess it would be a total of 9 if you include the U.S. that represent their big league roster. I just thought that was something that was very interesting as far as the international flavor of baseball. So it's essentially about a quarter of the players have not been born in the U.S., something I've always enjoyed, which will certainly affect the start of the season over the next year or two. I was going to say the World Cup of Baseball, the Baseball International Classic, the World Baseball Classic. Terrific. It has been outstanding. You get to see some top-notch ball players. I mean, what is better than a Japan-Cuba finale or a United States-Dominican Republic semifinal? That is just outstanding, top-notch baseball. And yes, you have the Caribbean Series in February, but every 4 years when you have the World Baseball Classic, it just brings everybody together and creates fantastic optimism as a prelude to that current season. Well, folks, hey, thank you for joining me. Doug Greenwald, thank you very much for the call. Michael Artis behind the scenes. This has been the Warning Track. We'll see you next week. I'm Brett Quintyne.